All right, sports fans, how's everybody out there doing? William Martin coming at you one more time here on YouTube with another edition of the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge Podcast. Now, we all know that the SEC and the Big Ten are the two heavyweights in college football. And as those two mega conferences continue to pick up steam, others have and will continue to suffer, unfortunately. Now, once upon a time, the Southwest, Big East, and Pac-12 conferences were all big-time players on the college football stage, but that is no longer the case as they've been done in by realignment and the pursuit of money. And you look at all three of these leagues, which I just mentioned, the Big Ten and SEC each have members that once upon a time were a part of those leagues. And with the way that things are going in college football right now, one can see the writing on the wall and come to the conclusion a conference realignment is not going to be done anytime soon. And when that next round of it does come down the pike, the big question is going to be which league will suffer and potentially fail to exist. Now, we've gone from a power six to now just a power five as the Big 12 and ACC are looking to hold on. The Big 12, of course, is losing Oklahoma and Texas to the Southeastern Conference, but they're picking up Arizona, Arizona State, Utah, and Colorado from the Pac 12 to give them 16 members, while the ACC is adding California and Stanford from the Pac 12, as well as SMU from the American Athletic Conference to give them 17 members. Now, one would think that this would be enough to keep everyone happy, or is it? Okay. Uh, we all know about the rumblings about both Clemson and Florida State challenging the ACC's conference grants of rights. Okay. And if Florida State and Clemson do get their way, it's going to be adios ACC and hello to either the Big Ten or the SEC. And if that does happen, I've talked about this before, it would open up the floodgates. And like I continue to say, Clemson and Florida State are not leaving the ACC by themselves. Okay. That's plain and simple. Now, the ACC has guaranteed more money. Okay. And right now, they're paying out their more money to their members than the Big 12 is. But that has not kept Florida State and Clemson happy, as plain and simple. They want that SEC and that Big Ten money, which is something that the ACC cannot do for them at this present time. Now, the Big 12, even though that they didn't have the payout per school that the ACC does, they're still on more solid ground than the Atlantic Coast Conference is. And that, in my opinion, is going to allow them to survive long term. First and foremost, the Big 12 has better leadership in place than the SEC, which is amazing because it wasn't that long ago that the Big 12 was on life support. They've gotten off of life support and they have a full fledged heartbeat right now. Okay. You just look at it. You look at today's report, okay, about the Big 12 looking for new ways to generate revenue and close that gap on the Big Ten and SEC as they're looking into potentially selling the naming rights for their league to a title sponsor, which would give the Big 12 more league revenue, but also open up Pandora's box as well because other conferences are going to sit up there and see, well, if the Big 12 can do this, so can we, as far as getting more money. And at the end of the day, collegiate athletics, they're open for business. Okay. So, schools are putting sponsor names on and advertisements on the field. They now have that opportunity to do it on the field at their stadiums. But let's be real about this. I mean, we've been seeing this for years. Okay, where we've seen sponsors' names on the field at bowl games, conference championship games, for men's basketball with their respective conference tournaments, you name it. So it was only a matter of time before something like this came down the pike. And if this deal goes through, I guarantee you that the SEC Big Ten and ACC are going to be paying attention to it as well. Now, in regards to another round of conference realignment, I've talked about this. The Big Ten and the SEC, they're going to be tight lipped on things right now. Okay. But they are going to be hovering over the ACC like buzzards, waiting to pick at a carcass as they know that they can have whatever schools that they want, while the Big 12 could come in and potentially get the remains on this. Okay. And if that were to be the case, which I do believe is going to happen at some point, the Atlantic Coast Conference would do what they've done in the past. They're going to try to sit back. We saw them for years raid the old Big East, and now it's going to be the American Conference as they look to hang on, as they could possibly, bring in the likes of a Memphis, a Tulane, or a Temple to join that league. But I've said it before, and I'm going to say it again. I simply don't see the Atlantic Coast Conference surviving this thing, and it starts and ends with their leadership. Okay. Now, one of the big questions is going to be who else besides Clemson and Florida State are going to be looking to leave the ACC. I'm going to put Virginia and North Carolina in that category as well. And hypothetically speaking, right now, but this is the way I could see this playing out. I could see the SEC getting a Florida State, Clemson, North Carolina, and a Virginia, which would push them to 20. Why? Because maybe not because they want to, but because they have to. Because as powerful as the SEC is, they cannot afford to have the Big Ten plant a flag in their backyard. I know that the Big Ten and SEC have joined forces now, okay, and they're at the front of this thing, okay. But at the same time, business is business. The SEC just can't afford to allow that to happen. The Big Ten, if they really wanted to, they could have had Cal and Stanford this year, but they chose not to. Maybe they, readdress that thing, in the future. I don't know. I could possibly also see the Big Ten going after a Syracuse or a Boston College, giving them a couple of more East Coast teams, giving them that Boston market as well. They already have New York, Chicago, and Los Angeles in their back pocket as well, as they would look to get to 20. If that were to be the case, I wouldn't be surprised to see the Big 12 going after a Louisville, a Miami, and potentially an SMU to give them another Texas school. Remember, they're losing Texas right now. And I could also see the remaining members of the ACC trying to keep things together to add the likes of Memphis, Tulane, and a Temple in order to survive. Not because Temple's a good football team, but they do give you the Philadelphia market. These are just things that I'm talking about hypothetically, but it's something that it would not surprise me to see happen at some point over the next couple of years, just like it was for the Big East from a football standpoint. Not getting Notre Dame on board has hurt the ACC. And if you're Notre Dame, you know, you don't have to join the ACC for football. Why? Because you're still going to get. They're looking to get their new television deal. They're going to get it. They clearly have a seat at the table for this expanded college football playoff. So if you're Notre Dame, you get the best of both worlds. You get that ACC money uh, for other sports. You still get to be a football independent, and you still get some money from the ACC as far as playing five games per year against schools from that conference in football. So at the end of the day, it's a win-win for Notre Dame, and it's going to at some point hurt the ACC just like it did the Big East in football. Okay, so I'm talking about all of this, and another question is where does Oregon State and Washington State fit into this equation? I mean, there's a lot of things that can happen with the Cougars and the Beavers. All right, they are talking and they're looking to rebuild the Pac-12. But what if the Big 12 wanted to talk turkey with them at some point? I don't know. There's a lot of talks about a potential reverse merger with the Mountain West, taking all the teams from the Mountain West and putting them into the new Pac-12. There's also rumors about Washington State and Oregon State just taking some teams from the Mountain West, looking to try to join up with some teams from the American Athletic Conference as well. We don't know what's going to happen, but I will say this: Oregon State and Washington State, they've gotten themselves a new television deal. They have better leadership than they did for so many years, first with Larry Scott and with Kevin George Kliakoff, excuse me, um, as the conference commissioners. So it's one of those, again, you need that leadership. And now they have that 2-year waiver, so they can sit back and really get ahead of this thing. And maybe, just maybe, they could find a way to survive this thing more than the ACC. We don't know. Okay. But it's one of those things you ask yourself, who survives this thing? It's every man for himself, every school president, every athletic director, as they try to go out there and make this happen. And right now, it comes down to Jim Phillips, the commissioner of the ACC, against Brett Yormark, the commissioner of the Big 12. Brett Yormark is a television person, he's an entertainment person, and he has brought that same mentality to the Big 12. His conference has been able to survive this thing. Why? Because he's all about getting markets from different regions to bring people in. I do think that the Big 12 is going to give you quality football for the upcoming college football year. I think they could have multiple teams in a college football playoff as well, which is only going to, help the exposure of that league. But I think he has a more sound mind for finances and ways of getting those finances for his members, which is going to help his league in the long term. Because at the end of the day, these school presidents just want you to continue hemorrhaging cash for them. And Yormark has a better ability to do that than Phillips does. So, like I keep saying, this thing is not going to end anytime soon. And now we're seeing leagues and schools trying to get creative in order to try to keep up with the Joneses, if you will, which are the SEC and the Big Ten. The battle is on, okay, and this battle will continue. And I think, getting back to the ACC, I don't think, like I said before, I don't think they have the leadership like the Big 12 has in place right now. The thing can see said in comparison to the Big Ten and SEC, and that could be their downfall. They have to sit back and revisit history. The lack of leadership hurt the Big East. Okay. The lack of leadership hurt the Pac 12. The lack of leadership almost destroyed the Big 12 before Brett Yarmark came in. Okay. So when it's all said and done, if you don't have that conference commissioner in place who can wheel and deal, if you don't have that conference commissioner that can talk turkey with the networks, and if you don't have that conference commissioner that can jump ahead of this thing in order to get as much money as possible for his respective members, then you know what? You have a tough hill to climb. And when it's all said and done, that's why I think the Big 12 survives this thing. And I think the ACC is really going to have to pull something out of their hat if they are going to hold on. So, folks, that is going to wrap it up. And as always, I want to take this time out to thank all of you for tuning into the 300 Pounds of Sports Knowledge podcast here on YouTube. I want to take this time out to thank all of you fine folks out there for tuning in. And if you haven't already, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. Now, if you're on the X, formerly known as Twitter, please feel free to follow me at 300 Pounds of Sports. And like I always say, if you follow me, it will be my pleasure to follow you right back. There's also the sports discussion group on Facebook at the Sports Depot 365. Now you can check it out. Drop a line and be a part of one of the better sports debating sites going on social media. So once again, fine folks, my name is William Martin, and I am signing off. And I'm saying take care and have yourselves a wonderful day.